Somebody asked me if you could use this big stitch technique with Quilt As You Go, and you absolutely can, but normally when I do Quilt As You Go, I've got the tops quilted to the batting, and I don't put the back on until it's entirely done. For these blocks though, I really like the way the stitches look on the back of the blocks as well, so I don't want to use my normal Quilt As You Go technique with this because I don't want to cover up the stitches on the back of the block. So I'm going to show you a different way to join your blocks together that will allow this to be the actual back of the quilt. I'm actually going to show you two techniques. One of them is an almost entirely handwork technique, which will allow you to do most of this work in your lap, which is what the person who asked me about this specifically wanted to do. The other technique I'll show you is going to be an entirely by machine technique. So first we're going to do the hand technique. So I've got these two blocks that I'm going to join together. Imagine these are just two blocks in a larger quilt. And I'm going to butt these seams together. I'm going to do that at the sewing machine, and then I'm going to cover those seams up with some bias tape. So this is a double fold tape. The two edges are folded into the center, and I've used this bias tape maker for it. This is a 25mm tape, but you can use whatever size you want for the look that you like, and you'll see what this is going to look like in the end. I'm going to show you how to use that maker in another video, but I wanted to just show you these strips. I've already pressed my bias tape and I've cut it. These blocks are 6 3/4 inches square, so I've cut this to 6 3/4 inches. I don't like to sew on a longer piece and then come back and trim it down. So first we're going to take this over to the sewing machine, and I'm just going to show you quickly, it's very, very simple how I butt those edges together. So I've got my machine set up. I've got matching thread to match the block, and I've got it set on the widest zigzag it'll go. And I'm going to set it up so that the seam where the two blocks join together is right lined up with that line on the middle of my presser foot. So I want that seam to be going right down the middle of my presser foot so that I'm stitching when my zigzags are going over that. They're going to catch on both sides of the block. And then I just sew that block together. And you don't even have to use a very wide zigzag. Do one more. All right, now we'll take it back to the window. You don't have to zigzag stitch the pieces together, but I do this kind of prep work a lot to make it really easy to work on in my lap later. I don't want to have to hold these two blocks together while I'm sewing, so I'll do that quick bit of work on the machine, and then I'm going to take these strips and I'm just going to center them right over that, and I'm actually going to glue those in place. I've got a fabric glue stick here. It's water soluble, so it'll make my basting strips a little bit stiff right now, but that's actually going to make it easier to sew, and then when I wash my quilt after it's all done, it'll wash up and be really nice and soft, so that glue will wash right out. So I'm going to make sure that I've got it centered, and I'm just going to press it down into place. And then I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing on the back. You don't need a lot of glue, but I don't want it falling apart while I'm trying to work on it. So I'm going to give myself a nice good swab on there. And then flip it over and center it on there. And you can already see that this is going to look really nice. I'm going to flip it back over. So I'm going to let that dry, and then it's going to be perfect for me to take and sit and work in my lap. I don't have to have any pins or clips on there that are going to tend to snag my thread. I've just got fabric and needle and thread, which is the most fun to stitch on. And what I'm going to do, you could either do a running stitch down each side, which would be really nice looking with the running stitches that I've got all over this project, and that's pretty simple to do. Just do a running stitch down each side. But I'm going to show you, I'm going to let this dry a little bit, and then I'm going to show you how to do a ladder stitch, which is going to be completely invisible. So this is that piece that I zigzagged down the middle and then covered up. This is now, the glue is now dry. And I'm going to show you quickly just a little bit of how to ladder stitch these edges down. So I've got a needle, I've got it threaded, I've got a knot in the end, and I'm going to just bury that knot in here. And now this is going to get hidden here because you'll join these two blocks together and then you will join two more blocks together and have a strip going the long way. So you'll build this out in sections. So this is going to be visible here, but that's okay because it's going to be hidden once you join another section to it. What you do for ladder stitch is you do little side-by-side stitches. So I'm going to go into the fold here and come out in the fold just a little bit further down. And then I'm going to zip across, and now I'm going into the block. This entire stitch is going to be in the block and coming out of the block right beside that strip. And then I'm going to jump across back into the strip. So I'm going into the fold and then coming out just a little bit down. And then I'm going to jump across again and go into the block. Trying to hold this at a very weird angle so that it's in the camera. Normally it goes a little bit faster than this. And you're just going to keep doing that. Take a stitch in the fold, take a stitch in the block, take a stitch in the fold, take a stitch in the block. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to pop in a video here that is specifically teaching ladder stitch. It's showing you how to sew up a stuffing opening, but it's the same stitch and it's using contrasting thread, so you'll be able to see it a little bit better. But I wanted you to be able to see how perfectly invisible that is. This is the section that I've stitched here. And you cannot see that stitching at all. So you could do visible running stitches down the edges, or you could do a completely invisible ladder stitch. You would need to do it down both sides of the strip and then flip it over and do the same thing on the back. But if you're doing this project, you probably don't have any issues with hand stitching.